We have, obviously, the championship game with Georgia and Alabama. A couple things I want to say. Number one, I think now, listen, the powers that be, they're wrapped up in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium tonight. The last thing they're thinking about is, what the rest of the world thinks. They're all excited about a college football championship game. I have said this before. This is not the first time. When you have your college football title game at the after the first week of the NFL playoffs, it's a major problem. It's no good. The college football season, and I know it's tricky, and I know they got their 40 bowls, and they got to kiss the Rose Bowl's rear end, and I get all that. And I know there's, they want to give them a little break at the end of the regular season, but it should end on New Year's night. They should have a championship game on January 1st. That's when the game should be. That's the end of the college football season as we know it. To have 4 NFL playoff games this weekend, and then all of a sudden tonight have, Reese Davis wax poetic with Herb Street on the on the grounds of Atlanta's new stadium there, talking to Bubba Watson, breaking down Georgia football with Alabama. It just feels forced. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right that the college football season ends tonight. Now, listen, I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to go home and watch it. Of course I'm going to go home and watch it. I mean, it's Georgia. And I'm not that wrapped up in the fact that it's 2 teams from the SEC. I know the Alabama-LSU game was an eyesore for a lot of people. That was a bad matchup. They had played already in the year. They were from the same division, at least in this scenario. Georgia did not play Alabama in the regular year, so this is almost like a little round robin. Auburn played Georgia twice. Alabama played Auburn, and now Alabama gets a chance to play Georgia when they decide a title. I just think it's a major issue when you got 4 playoff games that were played this weekend, and then, oh, by the way, on Monday afternoon, let's get yourself ready for a college football title game. I think they lose a little juice. I think they lose a lot of energy. I know if you live in a college football town, you can care less. If you live in Tuscaloosa, if you live in Atlanta, which is probably the best college football town in America, if you live in, I'm not even going to give you Columbus, Ohio, because it doesn't involve one of their Big Ten schools. But if you obviously live in Athens, wherever you may be from, this game you can't get enough of, this matchup. But to me, I don't know. You'll watch it, but you don't watch it with the expectation and the gusto that you would if this game was ending on New Year's night. I mean, figure out a way to play the semifinal games before Christmas and then play the championship game on New Year's night. That's what they should do. They'll never do it. Maybe play it January 2nd if you want to do it that way. Even then I could live with it. I just think when you get involved with the NFL postseason, it's just something weird to start the NFL postseason and then tonight we go back to college. It's something weird. Isn't it weird? We played 4 NFL playoff games. Oh, and let's go back to watch another college game. It just doesn't sit right. And I don't know how you solve it. They have too many bowl games as it is. That's the first way you solve it. You eliminate these bowl games, a lot of them that nobody cares about with nobody in the stadium. You eliminate some of them. You tell the Rose Bowl enough of forcing our hand. We'll tell you when the game is going to be, not the other way around, because the Rose Bowl's got to play the 5 o'clock game on New Year's Day. Well, if the Rose Bowl is not involved with that year's national championship game, then they get in the way, so to speak. It's tricky. There's a lot of moving parts, but it just doesn't feel right. That's the first thing. Second thing is, here is the reason why people love Alabama tonight. They're weird reasons. One, Alabama is going to feel very comfortable playing a team from their own conference in the championship game. 2, there's no Deshaun Watson, and obviously that's the kind of quarterback who hurts him in these games much more than a Jake Fromm, the Nick Marshalls of Auburn. Obviously Watson from Clemson a couple different times. These kind of quarterbacks do not hurt out of these stand-in-their-pocket kind of guys, don't hurt Alabama. That's number 2. Number 3, they're going to be very familiar with playing a team in their same conference in the title game. That's number 3. They were very familiar with LSU. Number 4, Saban's great against his assistants. He's 11-0 against his assistants. assistant coaches. You've heard that a million times. I've given you that. That's the fourth reason. Number 5, I've heard this all week. Alabama is not going to lose with Saban 2 championship games in a row. I've heard that all week. That, boy, is Alabama really going to lose 2 in a row in the NCAA title? I've heard that all week about how they can't lose 2 in a row. Watch Alabama now and then get blown out by Georgia. So I understand that, and I like Alabama too, and I picked them and everything else. I'll give up the 4 points. Not going to fool around with the money line. I'll give up the 4 points, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that they get the job. A lot of people bet the money line with Alabama, give up the big minus 180, and then get a small winnings on the other end. I wouldn't do it that way. I'd take a chance on the 4 or 4.5, whatever it might be. I like Alabama too. I think Georgia will be a little burned out. I think they had a lot of energy playing that game in Pasadena. It took a lot of effort to beat Oklahoma last Monday. It was a tremendous win, double overtime. Down 31-14, but they had to come all the way back to the East Coast. They had 5 days to sort of get themselves re-energized. Again, the game is near their campus, so you got all their fan bases looking for tickets. I think it's a lot to ask a college kid. Alabama had a business trip to New Orleans. They buried Clemson. They didn't have to go too crazy in the second half. They were the far better team. They can drive back to Tuscaloosa. I don't know what the distance is from Tuscaloosa to New Orleans. It's probably not more than a couple hundred miles. No matter how they got back, who knows? But they got back in pretty good shape on the Monday night. Georgia had to fly the next day. I don't know. I just think that Georgia could be a little worn out after that win there against Oklahoma. I think that may have been their championship game more than the game is tonight. And I know Alabama, Kirby Smart, and Saban, we know how many chances you get to win a championship. I get all that. But to me, it's hard not to take Alabama tonight in the game. Now, watch Alabama. The one thing I would say that does worry me a little bit is Georgia's got some karma. They got out of that Auburn loss. They beat Notre Dame early in the year. They were fortunate. They got out of that Auburn loss, had a second life. They beat Kentucky. They came back and then beat Georgia Tech easy. And then they got another crack at Auburn. They took care of them in the second half. Then they went out to Oklahoma. We all saw what they did in that game. They have a triple threat in the backfield with those 3 running backs. They might believe the fact that they were down 31-14. The quarterback looks pretty seasoned for a guy that you would think would be a little overwhelmed by the experience. He certainly wasn't there in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena last Monday. Who knows? Maybe Georgia, maybe it's their time to win one. They haven't won one since Herschel. It's been a long, long time for this great program. It isn't too far from home. Fan base, the whole bit. They're familiar with that stadium. They've won a game there already this year. So did Alabama, who beat Florida State there. But maybe it's, who knows? But I think smart money's got to bet in. It has to bet Alabama. Smart money in the game has to bet Alabama. Now, we talked last Thursday with Gary Danielson. We'll give you a minute or two of this right now because it's only 5 minutes, and then we'll go right to a break, get your calls in, back to the NFL, wherever you want to go. But let's give you a little sense of Gary D. This is from last Thursday with his conversation on specifically this game. Here you go. I think they have a huge psychological advantage of playing these teams in the SEC. And plus he's used to these championship games. I think that's an advantage for them, playing a team that they know so well. They are not going to be scared of Georgia. And Georgia, it is Alabama, team that got killed a couple years ago, 43-0, whatever the final was. I do think that plays into this a little bit. Alabama more comfortable against another SEC opponent than Georgia might be. How about that for a second?
I think that's true, but I kind of forgot a note that I had written down for another interview that I didn't use, and I wanted to use here. I do think the other equalizing point here is if Georgia was being coached by Mark Richt or name another guy and not Kirby Smart, I would agree with you even more. But I think the fact that Kirby Smart brings in Jim Chaney, who was at Tennessee and Arkansas, and their defensive coordinator, Mel Tucker, was at Alabama, and Kirby Smart was at Alabama. I think that football team looks at those guys and go, I trust my coaching staff. I trust what they're going to tell me. I trust that we can be balanced. And, the other thing that, bringing to the table, I love Kirk. Kirk did a great job in the game, and I thought it was called – I thought both games were called well, by the way, by the broadcaster. I wish – I'd like to send them a note. Please don't say a young true freshman Jake Fromm anymore. How about an old true freshman Jake Fromm? The guy has played 13 games or 14 games. He is ready to play. That is not their weak link, Jake Fromm, anymore.
Yeah.
That guy can play.
Fair point. Listen, I'd be a little worried about the Georgia karma. You know, some of these programs, they get in these runs, and all of a sudden, so, I mean, they had an incredible win. They beat Auburn. So I give them a little edge there. But outside of that, I can't find much. What does Georgia have to do to win the game?
The edge that Georgia has is, I've always believed that you don't have a chance. Everybody believes you have to, the formula to beat Alabama is up-tempo running quarterback. That's all nice. That's all icing on the cake. To me, I think you have to have efficiency from your quarterback. I told you before the game that if Clemson, the keys to the game, I thought the two games were, can Georgia run the ball against Oklahoma? Obviously it could. And the key to Clemson over Alabama was, could Clemson throw the ball? They couldn't. Deshaun Watson was the difference in that football game. They didn't have a quarterback. Alabama destroyed Clemson's passing game. They put Fitzpatrick on Renfro, the slot, and said, really?
He didn't catch a pass.
They cut garbage passes at the end of the game. So they took away their key player, and Clemson couldn't throw. So I like the fact that two things are going in the favor. Coaches who know Alabama and Jake Fromm, who is efficient as a quarterback. He hits what he throws at. Okay, and they have an emerging wide receiver here, Javon Wims, who's a mismatch. He's 6'4", high school basketball player who's finally coming into his own. Watch number 6.
Yeah, good player.
He's a tough one-on-one player on the outside, and Alabama's not going to change. They're going to play man-to-man. The second part of this game that nobody talks about, everybody zeroes in on Roquan Smith. They should. Great player. They zero in on Carter and Bellamy. They're two edge rushers. Both came back. Both could have been in the NFL. Absolutely true. But the inside front three of Georgia is legit, and they're all veterans. Trent Thompson, John Atkins, Tyler Clark, number 52 you saw making play, 13 Ledbetter, 51 Marshall. They are veterans. They're stout. A year ago, they were still learning how to play Kirby and Nick's two-gap system. Now they got it down. They're playing it very solidly, and one wonders that will Alabama have ease running the football? I don't think so, and that brings the last part of this puzzle. Jalen Hurts has struggled lately. He has not been playing his best football for Alabama the last 4 or 5, second half of this season. Will Jalen Hurts show up and be the guy that played in the national championship game a year ago, or will he be standing there looking like he's staring down receivers and missing wide-open players like he did last week against Clemson? I think that's a big part of the game.
Wow, it sounds like you like Georgia in this game a little bit.
I like it to be a really close football game. I do. I think Georgia could steal this game. Nobody who's smart picks against Alabama, but I think we're going to have a really good football game.
So you would take the 4 points?
I would.
Wow. And you think it's high scoring or low scoring?
I think it'll be a low scoring game. Just it'll look a little bit like the Clemson-Alabama game. It should be in the 20s. These two teams are built around controlling the football. I think they're built around defense. They've got a lot of 4- and 5-star players. I don't see how this is a game in the 30s. I think this is a game in the 20s.
Mad Dog Unleashed on Sirius and XM Radio.